Hello everyone and welcome to our special webinar today where we are, for the first time ever, basically going to turn the floor over to all the attendees to ask questions on the Design Manager Professional. Myself, Brad, and Jana will be fielding the questions and I'll be answering them to the best of my ability. So as soon as we're ready, Jana, I am ready to go.
All right, Brad. So the first question today is, can you dictate a proposal number rather than letting the system assign it?
Great question. No, you cannot dictate the proposal number. However, you can do a few things. Let's pull up a proposal here as example. Notice that Design Manager is going to automatically create a sequential proposal number for each project. So every project is going to have its own series of numbers starting from 1 all the way up to 9,999. Now, if you're coming from another system, perhaps where you already have an existing project that has a proposal system going on, what I often recommend is when you're making the proposal itself, notice on the new proposal window, you have the name or phase. Now this defaults to the name of the project. I always suggest to change it to something a bit more indicative of what's included on the proposal itself, but it can also be used as a cross-reference to that older system. So I might put something in here like, reference number 0036. Perhaps that was the older, the proposal number in the older system, and this might be living room. Okay. Or actually, how about the hallway? And now when we generate the proposal, we still have our Design Manager's reference number for the proposal number 5, but now we have this just user-defined reference number that we're manually entering in, and conveniently we can see that right on the proposal and documents window itself. Otherwise, you may be also able to another suggestion that I have used in the past is if it's not a voluminous amount of proposals we're dealing with, let's say it's not like 100 or something along those lines, I have had clients actually enter in a single specification for each of the proposals and then make a proposal for each one of those to get themselves up to the sequential number to match the old system. Some people feel that's overkill, but it does synchronize the two systems. Okay, Jana, next question. I hope that one answered successfully.
Okay, great. So everyone can enter their questions into the questions pane on their go to webinar panel. Right now, the next question is there a way to apply a credit card payment aside from making a journal entry?
Okay, yes, there is, and that is an involved question, which I'll try to go over the process in a somewhat summated fashion. There is, I'm sure, on our Help Center, which I'll bring up just for everyone's reference, which is knowledge.designmanager.com, you could type right into the Help Center something along the lines of credit cards and access a ton of information upon doing so. Because setting up the credit card, right here, setting up and using credit cards is a whole webinar that I've recorded in the past. It's going to describe that process, but I'll do so here as well in a much briefer fashion. There's a few things you need to do to handle credit card processing in Design Manager. First of which, under your Accounting tab, General Ledger, Accounts, you're going to need to create an account that represents the liability of that credit card. For example, I have my account 20,100 for my American Express card. Notice the type I'm selecting is not just liability, indicating that I'm eventually going to owe that individual, that entity the funds that I'm borrowing, but I'm selecting liability credit card. It's a specialized version of the liability account that's going to allow us to utilize the American Express account when we're processing when we're entering in bills that were paid via American Express. Next, I'm also going to need a vendor. that represents the entity itself that I have to pay. American Express isn't going to allow me simply to have all this money on the cuff. They're going to expect me to remit payment to them at some point in the near future. So the credit card payee would be a specialized vendor that I have created for American Express. I have my credit card number entered. That's entirely for reference only. You don't have to have that in there. So we need to have an American Express or a credit card account created first. Now, by having the credit card account set to liability credit card, when I'm entering in my bills, and it could be an operating expense, could be a vendor invoice, vendor deposit, it doesn't matter. Not only do I have an entry for paying via check, I can select to pay via American Express. When I do so, I'm not going to be going through my accounts payable. Rather, I'm going to be debiting the appropriate COGS, WIP, or expense account, and I'll be crediting the American Express account itself. So I'll be indicating that I am putting myself more and more in debt with American Express. Now, once per month, of course, American Express is going to desire that I pay them. So when I go to pay American Express, I'll be entering in an operating expense. I'd be paying via check or some other mechanism, a wire transfer, etc. American Express would be my vendor. January 2016, let's say is my invoice number. I would use the American Express account as my invoice distribution account, and otherwise I'm going to be reducing my balance due with American Express by whatever amount I choose to pay. And I could even go ahead and hit wire transfer, indicate that I'm paying through my banking institution's website or some other way of transferring the funds out of my checking account. And there we go. And then when I post that, when I post my payment to American Express, I'm going to reduce my American Express liability and simultaneously reduce my cash in this example. So that's how we use credit card processing in a very, very summated format. Again, please refer to our help center and use one of the many tools we have up that describes that process in a much greater detail. But an excellent question for a newer user. Okay, Jenna, what's next?
Okay, so the next question is, how can you store a client email address so it will pop up when emailing a proposal or invoice?
Okay, good question as well. When you're going to email a proposal or invoice, Design Manager is going to refer back to the project for that particular client. Let's take a look at Eric and Joanne Carter's Pennington home. On my Notes tab, oops, pardon me, right on my Project tab, my email address, designmanager.com. Now, when I save the project, whenever I go to email a proposal for that project, that's the email address it's going to be pulling from. So as an example, we look over our proposals for that project, and now I want to go to reprint, email, design, that will be the address that it's going to default to. So just make sure that you enter it onto the project window itself, and Design Manager will automatically do that for you. Further, if you enter the email originally on your clients, if we look down at Carter's, let's make this a little bit bigger. Look down at the Carter's, and I have my email address entered here. Now, every time I create a brand new project for the Carters, this email will default down, so I don't have to do it each time. Excellent question. Jana?
Okay. Can you review how to apply deposits and retainers to invoices and proposal deposits?
can I review how to apply deposits and retainers to invoices and proposal deposits? Is that what the question was?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not 100% sure what that means, but I will go through the process in a conceptual manner. Hopefully that will answer the question in general. Now, deposits and retainers are going to always be entered, obviously, through cash receipts for a particular project. And as we can see on our top grid here for client deposits or retainers, there's going to be two mechanisms to do so. Now, accounting-wise, the transactions are the exact same. When we enter in a deposit or a retainer, we're going to be debiting or increasing the selected cash or banking institution account while simultaneously crediting our client deposit liability account. Conceptually, however, the two are somewhat different. Retainers, for example, are generally just a pool of money. So if I continue to add retainers to a particular project, I'm just increasing that entire retainer available amount. Further, the retainer is unallocated funds. It is simply a large mass of money that the client has provided us in order to keep our cash flow on a positive basis so we can do our ordering, pay for our design services, etc. Contrasting to that are deposits. Deposits are applied explicitly to individual proposals. So we propose a particular amount. In this case, $33.60 is what we're requesting on proposal 3 for the Carters, and we're going to be receiving funds against that proposal, even if it may be a little bit larger or smaller than the amount requested. Now, once we receive those funds, they are tied intricately to the items on that proposal. Okay? So the question, more so, let me find if I have a good example here. Perfect. The Carter's New York apartment. I have $2,500 of proposal received so far, which I can see on my cash receipt window, though I do not use the window to do so. Rather, if I'm trying to monitor my deposit or proposal ratio, I might look at my deposit analysis report, my open client deposit report, or even on the project status window, I can see the retainers that I have received in so far, and I just have that single one. Now, if I wanted to move that deposit to an existing proposal, so the clients gave us $2,500 initially, and now they say, hey, listen, can you allocate some of that to a particular proposal? Well, sure, I can. Let's go ahead. We'll use this dresser as an example. Increase the price to something a bit more rational. And notice my deposit percentage here. This is a very critical figure when it comes to deposits in Design Manager. It's this deposit requested amount that's actually going to be the determining factor how much deposit gets received to a particular item. So let's say we get 50% here, coming up with a deposit requested of $975. If I make my proposal for that particular item, we can see I'm requesting that $975. And now the Carters say, hey, listen, Brad, you already have $2,500. Could you simply apply a portion of that to this particular proposal? Absolutely. All we're doing is redistributing the allocation of those funds. I do all of such reallocation through the cash receipt window, utilizing the project in question. Now, my amount is technically zero. I'm not receiving any new funds. I'm simply reallocating how the existing funds are being maneuvered. So I might select check as my payment type and say from retainer. What I'm going to do is to indicate that I'm removing or reducing my retainer, I'm going to highlight it on my client deposit retainer grid, click the edit button as indicated by the pencil, and I'm going to put in a negative value, a minus 975. Move to proposal 1. My this payment now indicates that I am inputting a negative or reducing the retainer. Now my deposit is already coming up as indicated at $975 for me for the proposal. So if I tag or select each one, my net effect on the cash receipt goes down to 0, and it should. I'm not actually increasing my cash, I'm just changing how it's being affected. But click OK. We actually have a single receipt for a total of 0, but that has two pieces. Reducing the retainer with the negative, and now I'm increasing the deposit on the proposal. We go ahead and post those. Again, cash does not increase because the amount is 0, but if we look at our proposal, we now see that we have indeed not only requested but received that amount. And we can see on the proposal status that the item has also received that amount, a very handy window that's often underutilized, by the way. This will show a subset of the items on that proposal, and it's very convenient to see how deposits are being allocated, how far along in the process of invoicing, etc., the items may be. And lastly, we can see that back on our handy project status window. And notice, my total available amount is still $2,500, but now my retainer is reduced to $1,525 while my deposits are up at $975. So I'm just reallocating those funds. The process is the exact same with applying a retainer to an invoice, particularly if it's an existing invoice. Let's look back on our cash receipt window. Let's go ahead and actually make an invoice as an example, utilizing the same project. Here is our dresser. Get rid of some of these guys. Here we go. Invoice for dresser. I'm going to tag or select my dresser. Design Manager is automatically going to apply that deposit that I have already allocated towards the proposal. Now with the retainer, I can use a portion right here. If the carder said to me, hey, listen, again, you still have $1,525 of my original retainer available according to our records, can you just use it to pay that invoice? Sure. And the available retainer is even conveniently listed for me on the new invoice window. So I could just enter in $975 right here and reduce my balance due down to 0, effectively using the retainer during the invoicing process. Let's, however, for our example, say that I actually posted the invoice and here's our invoice, balance due of $975. Now if that invoice already existed and I want to move, say it's the end of the project and I want to use some of that existing retainer to pay off that invoice, just like our proposal example, back to cash receipts, pop in our project, amount's going to be 0, payment type, check, from retainer. This is entirely for my benefit, quite honestly, up here. And again, I'm going to indicate removing or reducing the retainer via a negative value, negative -5, pay invoice 10019, select it, select my invoice as well. Guess what? One negative retainer, a positive payment, total receipt equals 0. As our amount is the same, we have a difference of 0. Again, one receipt with two pieces, the negative retainer and the positive payment on invoice, net effect on cash is going to be 0. But when we post, now I can see, here's my invoice, there's our original sale, there's our deposit being applied, there's our payment. So the invoice is now closed with the balance due of 0. And I can look back on my project status and see that my retainer available amount is going down as well. So you use that cash receipt window not only to record funds coming in, but also to reallocate those funds. Now, one thing that may occur where people may get a little bit tripped up is once the items have been invoiced, adding another deposit to the proposal is not going to change the effect on the existing invoice. The item or items have already been invoiced, and now you want to apply those funds as a payment on that invoice. If you apply it as a deposit on a proposal, it's not going to reduce the balance of the original invoice. You're going to be just hanging money onto those items, and you can get yourself into a bit of confusion at that point. So that's one thing to be certainly aware of. That being said, I always, and this is one reason why I suggest this, always wait when possible to invoice the client for the good or service upon them taking ownership of it. What do I mean by that? All right, well, my dresser. I don't want to invoice that to the carder until they have taken full possession of that dresser. It's in their house, they've approved of it, etc. Okay? That invoice represents the fiscal, physical, and conceptual transfer of ownership of that dresser. It is now in possession of the carders. Okay? So I want to wait to invoice until that process has completed. I can take deposits on proposals as much as I want to, particularly in today's climate. I might ask for 25, let's say 50% of the proposal as a deposit initially, and then I may ask for, let's say, another 25% in order to keep my cash flow at an appropriate level. And you can absolutely do that, and Design Manager even has a mechanism to do so. If we look at our proposals again, let's grab somebody here. By editing an existing proposal, you can use the additional deposit request feature to ask for that additional 25%. So you can keep having funds coming in before ultimately invoicing the item. So you can get as many deposits on a proposal as you want, so you don't end up tripping yourself up by invoicing an item and then applying a deposit subsequently later. Excellent question. So I hope I hit that from a wide variety of different thought processes, how it works in general, and some of the errors that I've seen in my experience as well. Great question. Jana, what's next?
All right. So we're coming to the end of our questions. If anybody has questions, be sure to enter them into the questions pane on the GoToWebinar panel. The next question we have, though, is if the deposit on the invoice is not what I expected, what report would you recommend?
Great question. First and foremost, project reports, deposit analysis. What this report will do, not only is it going to provide a historical reference of all of our retainers, deposits being recorded, and the invoices to which they're being applied towards, and we're using our Cardis New York apartment as a very simple example. We have our retainers up here. Here's our initial $2,500. Here's us moving a piece to our deposit on proposal. Here's a piece moving it to the payment on the invoice. So we can see all that chronology listed there. Here's the application of that on our invoice and our current retainer available. If we contrast this report to the Open Client Deposit report, the Open Client Deposit report is only focusing on the values that are not yet applied to invoices. Further, the deposit analysis has another series of pages that shows, well, this one's been used, of course. It's going to show each of my items with the amount that I requested, received, and applied, and the available amounts. So that is the go-to report for when you're trying to determine what may have happened on a particular proposal. And again, even if we look at the proposal window, status, this window has a deposit view. Normally it has all this information in here about invoicing information, payments, check numbers, balance due, etc. But if I'm focusing solely on how my deposits are being requested, applied, and received, I can pop it into deposit view, and the window becomes much more concise. And you're also allowed to manually allocate received deposits here as well, which can be helpful, yet can be a little bit tricky if you're not 100% sure what you're doing. So deposit analysis report under project management reports is your go-to because it gets down to the item level. And then if you're just focusing on a singular proposal itself, the proposal status window also provides the information that you're looking for. Excellent questions. Deposits can be tricky. Any other questions out there, Jan? I'm surprised we're not flooded a little bit more.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have any questions pending right now. If anyone has any questions, definitely make sure you enter them on the questions pane in the GoToWebinar panel.
And remember, if there are specific questions out there, feel free to use the resources that are afforded to you. Again, we have our Help Center out there, which has a wide variety of resources that can lead you to all of our recorded webinars. You can even contact technical support as well. You can contact technical support via the Contact Us here, where you can go in and ask questions so our technical support staff can help you out. And you can even attach screenshots or documents to that. You can email support directly from here. So never feel like your questions are going to go unanswered, because there's tons of ways to get that information. And almost everything out there that you can imagine is available under that help system. We've been crafting our help center for years and years and years and years. So tons of information are out there. And it might just be as simple as putting in deposits, and you're going to get tons of ways to see how you can input information, receiving retainers, vendor deposits, client deposits, why our accounting system is accrual-based, which it should be for interior designers, etc. How to enter cash receipt for a deposit requested less than what's requested on a proposal. All of that has been documented in great degrees in the past. So again, feel free to use those resources, and our team is always willing to help. Well, again, I think this is going to be a great feature that we're going to do again in the future. So stay tuned for our next version. And as you're in your design manager, heck, just take a second, jot down those questions, and come fully loaded next time, and I'll be happy to answer all of them. Okay, well, thanks for everyone who did join us today. Again, please use the resources out there. We're always here to help, and jot those questions down. And I know